There is something, I don't know what it is, some people say that's the magic of SIM. I would say it has to do with a few aspects of it. One of them is that I think that the students who come here are individuals who are not only looking for a top management education. Yes, they know it's a top-ranked program and it's St.Gallen and it's all those kind of things. But the program is putting an emphasis on aspects which would be too time-consuming for someone who just wants to purchase a program and get the next plaquette to put on the jacket and say, I got this as well. It's too time-consuming for that. So you really need to be interested in those undercurrents of the program. So I think they are interested in something which helps them to still find themselves. Our philosophy is that you're never done as a human being, right? So you're always searching, exploring, you're building your potential, and that continues a lifelong. So we try to say it's not a busy school, it's a business school. And I can only speak for the program and the people I know at the school, at the institution. But alone the fact that such a program gets a chance to prevail and keep itself for that long in such an institution is a compliment for the institution at the same time, to leave room and space for this. And so I think as a SIMI, the students feel that here is a place where they can learn more about themselves, not just about whether they can learn things by heart even quicker than they did at the bachelor's level or in the high school, or that they say, now I can actually use my professional networking skills I was always good at and finally rip it off here and continues. But they still have something, they say, there is still something they can learn about themselves, And this is something which I think most of the students share. Another thing is the community. This aspect of understanding that you're always stronger together if you know how to collaborate than if you're a lone nut out there, even if you're very smart but you can never outsmart the group. You can outsmart the group if the group doesn't know how to collaborate. And this is something they should also learn here, right? How to do that. So these are two aspects, and I'm sure there are more. We would continue talking, we would find out some more, but probably that's goes in this direction. Yeah. My name is Omid Aschari. I'm the managing director of the SIM program. I'm an associate professor of strategic management here at the university. And I'm employed here since 2003. It didn't start as a front runner, right? So everything starts small and it takes time until it comes out of obscurity and eventually becomes a front runner. Why? Because there are a lot of dedicated, engaged people who have a kind of a maturity to understand when to push for something and when to defer, to make sure that the vision to develop such a program and the community around it has a chance to show itself, right? We always go the extra mile. We try to live up to something which we would like to see in management education. So there's a vision behind it. That's something which is never sacrificed for, some other, also important, but other kind of business priorities. So that's always, number one is always whether we are truthful towards realizing a vision based on certain principles. That's always the first. The vision is very simple. It's I once read in a newspaper, it was a line which summarizes it well in a certain way. It basically says not to try to be the best in the world, but trying to contribute the best for the world. Because then it's not a matter how big you are, how small you are, how quick you are, etc. The point is that every person, every program, right, every organization, every unit can contribute something meaningful to something bigger. The point is whether you believe in something bigger and have a positive attitude towards it, then you can release the energies towards it. If you don't and say, well, I'm so small, we are just one program out of thousands of programs out there, what shall we do? We just do what we can within the confinements of what we can imagine, what is here, is different than saying we want to really change the world, but with our little contribution. And then there is a chance that sometimes this little contribution can have a big impact. For example, when you are 10 years number one in the rankings, for example, people listen to you differently, right? So you can talk with ranking agencies, you can talk with other schools, you can talk with different other thought leaders, and you get the attention, right, of those partners and people. And then you can start influencing thought. And that's something which a small program can do, although it's very small and tiny, right? We're talking about an intake of 50 students a year, approximately 55. We have a community of 900 plus people around the world. That's the second example. For example, yesterday I was talking to two alumni, one SIM 8 and one SIM 9. This connects to the generation, right? 8th and 9th generation. And the topic was that they came up with the idea to do something in the area of sustainability in a practical manner, and trying to enthuse the whole community by the idea of how can we learn from each other everyday life, what we could do to make a difference. And that sounds, on the one hand you can say, well, nice idea. But if you think that these 900 plus people, a good majority of them are family, right? They have their own network and other friends, and they also have friends. So we're talking about several thousand people where there are trust relationships about listening to, okay, can I do something more, something meaningful throughout my days to the topic of sustainability? And then in a sudden, if you think about what we consume, at least in the Western world alone, and you think about all these different things people can do, and they're all sitting in positions of influence, our decision makers, our leaders out there, then you can imagine what impact it can have, right? Again, it's a small program, but 17 years later, 18 years later, because you connected everyone to the vision, and people see it as an authentic, they see the authenticity behind it, that it's not just show, it's really something why people are involved, engaged in that, and they themselves are therefore engaged in that. And through that, you can really make a lot of meaningful change out there, create impact. There are different things which we do on a regular basis. Regular means several times a year. We have, first of all, we gather a lot of feedback. We have a lot of conversations, not just with industry experts, but also with sort of experts of different generations, right? So that's one way. We are in contact with schools around the world. So we are in strong contact with those. We are in contact with foundations who have specialties in areas which have to do with education of young people, where we learn a lot of how to bring in aspects into our program, because it is eventually a program which has business and social impact, right? Then what we do, we screen the markets regularly. We look for new trends. We anticipate ourselves trends in the meanwhile, and try to basically make sure that our course constellation is all, not just the courses themselves, but generally the topics which are brought in left and right are aligned with what a student who finishes in 2 years or in 1.5 years, or in 2.5 years, will experience on the market, right? So we are all the time, we're basically planning 3 to 5 years ahead of time, right? So it's not like, usual budget cycle that we do something from one year to the other. There's certain aspects in your operational work which is confined to those 12 months. But in terms of evolving the program, it takes a 3 to 5 year time corridor, right? And then the other thing is at least I see that as my role specifically, to make sure that we don't get complacent with what we're doing, right? Making sure that the program is living up to remembering day one being back in summer 2003, saying, okay, if this would be the beginning of the program, of a program, how would we go about constructing it, right? So right now, for example, in the middle of preparing for a large reform of the program, which will take place in 2025, right? But preparing the pilots, the learning loops, which you need to do so that in 2025 you come up with something which is robust and again points into the future, hopefully ahead, together with other programs, because one learns from each other, but ahead of the programs in a way that it can also encourage other programs to do the same thing, right? The program needs to have a agile culture. I say it very, deliberately. The first component of a makeup of a program is you need to think, what kind of culture do you want to cultivate? For me, that's more important than the courses, the technology around it, etc., etc. The type of people you want to attract to the program and the type of people who teach in the program and work together, that's for me culture. All the communication, behaviors, right? The way, the patterns, the dynamics which happens. This decides whether this program is going to live up to what it's meant for. And that's the culture, therefore, is the first element. And then you start building the program around that picture you see of the way people interact and learn and decide, and the concerns and issues they may have, and the thoughts they have. How do you deal with this diversity of talent which is in there? Because every person is talented, right? But what you try to do with a program, you try to kind of touch base this talent pool and make it explosive, right? Make sure that the individual starts learning because of the environment, the culture, in a way that he or she would have never thought, he would have that potential. And then what you need then is to create enablers to make sure this culture can prevail. First of all, come into place, and then prevail and continue. And for that, you need the right type of technology. It's not technology as such. It's about technology which can enable this culture to blossom up. You need the type of infrastructure, right? You need the type of policies and regulations, because those are also necessary, right? Because you need some organization. Learning also needs to be organized, but again, not in a way that it stifles the imagination of people or their creativity and those kind of things. So this balance of these two things, structural elements, process elements, and then the cultural reality, right, of what you try to create or initiate, right, for it to be created by the participants. Those are two of the elements. A third element is then also finding the right balance between vision and strategy. The combination of strategy and vision also needs to be in the right balance, because with the vision alone, that's not realistic to be able to do it. So you need to work with the systems which we have to create something which we don't have yet. And that's a tricky thing, but it works. Aims achieved is actually a very important indicator, because it's more general, but it's the most important indicator in my view, because it basically signals what alumni, how they evaluate what the program was able to do for them 3 years after they graduated, right? So once they are 3 years in the job market and have gone through a lot of sophisticated trainings, and you know how companies in the beginning also invest in the young people, want to make sure they grow into the company, and they have seen all the spectrum of things in those 3 years, and then they look back and say, okay, before that I was in this program, so how did this program help me to get where I am right now? And that is actually the meaning of this indicator, aims achieved. The program wants to be real, wants to create real value for the students, wants to really have an impact, wants to be provide a meaningful education based on the best possibilities of what we know on this planet, how management education can look like. It seems like people are very satisfied with what they get and they remember it. What we found out that a group size beyond 60, the dynamics in the group changes. It's more difficult to grow, the group can grow together in a way that you don't have right away subgroups. And we generally don't have, that subgroups. In general, we don't have them, but I think with group sizes 60 and beyond, it becomes much more difficult. If you really want to get to know the people in the program and learn from them and the constellations, etc. It has to do with our class sizes. We have classes with maximum 30 students that are so-called integrative courses. And with 30 students, a faculty member can, of course, interact differently than if you have 50, 60, or 100 or 200 people in your classes, right? We don't have that. The biggest classes which we have is the whole cohort of 55 students, basically. Another reason is that we do have a portfolio of different master programs at university, so that it's not like the university has one program with 700 people. It has different types of programs. They all have their own niches and their specific topics, and also their specific subcultures. And together they create this bouquet of, like a flower bouquet, right, of different flowers. And then you really kind of have to think as an applicant, as a potential applicant, what are you really looking for? Where do you want, in which way does a program kind of push you in a direction where you want to end up later on when you become employable and seek your first employer, your second employer later on. And therefore, admission-wise, we are looking. We have a very sophisticated admissions regime. We have asynchronous video interviews where applicants basically answer questions ad hoc. And those are then being reviewed by different reviewers. We have an essay which needs to be written and is then both the way the essay is put, the topic, as well as the way it's analyzed is complementary to the other admissions components. We look for grades, GPA, We look for extracurricular activities for international experience, ideally, right? Because we want to find out whether the individual has some exposure, had some exposure to different environments, different markets, different cultures, or has been, stuck in one place maybe. Sometimes it's difficult to say, it's a blurry definition, but we have our own ways of how we can make sure that everyone is treated fairly, case by case. We look at the GMAT as well, but we don't overvalue it, it's just another component. And all these things together give us an indication of whether an applicant, whether it's a win-win situation, right? It goes both ways. So, and then if you would ask me, the real admissions starts when the program starts, because the whole program experience is actually it's like you are testing yourself all the time, evaluating yourself, and making sure that you go through the program in a way that does two things. On the one hand, that you sharpen your skills, right? Build up knowledge, know-how, meaningful experiences. But on the other hand, it's also about personal development. So whether you could learn how to collaborate, how to reflect about yourself, how to give feedback to others, learn how to empower other people, how you can initiate bold visions. We have this one course, SIMagination challenge, you know about. So that is exactly about that, right? About developing leadership qualities and applying things you have learned in other courses as well, strategic thinking, how to mobilize a team, how to deal with uncertainty, how to deal with high pressure and stress, and perform in a high level. But also learn work-life balance in this program is also a challenge, right? You also have to learn about that. How to manage yourself. So many things which you won't find in the official curriculum where the courses are enlisted, right? But they are equally important, if not more important. Together they build a symbiosis of what you can go through. And we take care really of the whole spectrum. Imagination challenge is, the word came to my mind because I was reading this quote by Albert Einstein where he says, imagination is worth more than knowledge. Because what do you do with knowledge in a world which is changing? The meaning of things is changing. You have to imagine things where you say, this is actually something I would wish for others, but it's not there yet at all, right? And with the knowledge I have, the knowledge doesn't point me to that need, the knowledge itself. And so therefore saying, we need to ignite the minds. But minds are not a vessel where you just need to fill up and close it, and people run around for the rest of their life with that. So this is the picture of, if I would quote Plutarch, for example, who brought it up as an image. But the idea of SIMagination challenge is that you should use your imagination to tackle challenges, because challenges make you grow. These are the places which are not comfortable usually, and you can only grow in places when you can surpass your comfort zone. It doesn't mean comfort zones themselves are not important. You also need them, but in order to grow at a certain age, you can make more of your learning curve if you're confronted with challenges, or someone else can see, okay, this challenge is set up in a way, if I empower you and trust you and accompany you, you will be able to do it. And the person, him or herself, the student basically, may think, by myself I would have never, if I wouldn't get the push here and there and here and there, some words of encouragement, and maybe here and there some workshops or inputs from expertise or whatever, I wouldn't be able to do that. And they would never dare to do it. And through SIMagination Challenge, therefore, they learn, first of all, what is actually within them. They connect that talent with needs which exist in the outer world. So therefore, SIMagination Challenge is everywhere around the planet. On every continent, we had already initiatives which students actually really initiated themselves. And I'm just accompany them, right? I'm basically like a more as a faculty member, more in the role of a nurse who is helping them to give birth to their big ideas, rather than the person who says, this is the big idea. SIMagination Challenge is also about transformation. It's not just about going and doing an initiative. It's about learning how to first come up with this idea, testing it, preparing it, testing your assumptions, going there, making mistakes, learning from it, working with NGOs, intercultural learning, all these things are happening. You need to reflect upon your experience as well, right? And at the same time, you also need to reflect about what transformation you are making as an individual, right? And with the help of coaches, career advisors, faculty, etc. And that's the reason why this course, which takes over a whole year, is so intense, so significant for the students, because for the first time, people are not applauding them for having accomplished something which most of the other people who applaud them already know what the result is, right? So they are creating something real for parts of the world or for needs which no one is taking care of really to that extent. We don't have yet the systemic solutions, right? And the world is full of it, right? So I don't need to look very long for great initiatives. When they start this in September, they go through it, they finish in May, they write a reflection paper. The next cohort starts next September. And what they do, they need to hand over, right? And handover means what? Means letting go, detach yourself. But detach yourself doesn't mean you're indifferent to the project, right? You think about what's the purpose? How can I make sure that the purpose of this initiative can survive? You can only do that by letting other people, take charge and continue. And you need to get into the role of a mentor with 25, right? And then the whole thing starts again, right? And you're now a mentor. It's not that they are then only in their own initiatives, they also collaborate beyond initiatives within a cohort. So I have then the finance people in each of the initiatives, which then come together with me, and then we think about how can we make sure we can generate additional funds for what we want to do. And so it's a great learning, and for me as well. So that's really wonderful. If I would put it in a sentence, I would say it's service leadership. And developing leadership qualities, not just leadership skills, leadership qualities, and integrating different skills you learn throughout the program in a very practice-oriented, purpose-driven manner. My wish for every SIMI is to live happy and meaningful lives. Yeah, that's what I sincerely wish for everyone.